Do you know what happens inside a child's brain during the first 3 hours after sundown on a Friday evening? I'm not talking about something mystical or abstract. I'm talking about a neurological window that Jewish families have been using for over 3,000 years without ever calling it by its scientific name. For 38 years, I have worked with families across New York, New Jersey, Florida, and California. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the single most neglected hour in modern parenting is Friday night. Not Monday morning when the school week begins. Not Sunday afternoon when homework piles up. Friday night. The night that most families give away to screens, to exhaustion, to take out eaten in silence. Jewish families represent 0.2% of the world's population, yet 22% of all Nobel Prize winners have come from Jewish homes. That is not genetics. That is not money. That is a system. And tonight I'm going to show you one specific practice from that system, a Friday night ritual that has been passed down through generations of Jewish families. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it with your child, starting this week. What I will share toward the final minutes of this teaching is something I have never heard discussed in any parenting book or any classroom. It is the reason this ritual produces visible changes in a child's memory, focus, and emotional stability within 21 days. This is one of the 7 Torah laws of the genius child that I have spent 38 years studying, and today you are going to receive it in full. My grandfather, Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, taught in Brooklyn for 47 years. He taught 3 generations of the same families. He watched children become parents, and then watched those parents bring their own children to his classroom. And every single Friday, without exception, he would say the same thing to every family leaving his cheder before sundown. He would say, "Tonight is not for teaching. Tonight is for remembering." I was 12 years old the first time I really understood what he meant. He sat me down on a Friday evening after my mother had lit the candles, and he asked me one question. He said, "Aaron, tell me one thing you learned this week that changed how you see the world. Not something you memorized, not something you repeated for a grade, something that changed you." I sat there in silence for almost 2 minutes, and then I told him about a passage from Mishle, from the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 6, which says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." I told my grandfather that I had realized for the first time that the verse does not say teach a child what to know. It says train a child in the way he should go. The difference between those two ideas opened something in my mind that has never closed. My grandfather smiled and said, "Now that belongs to you forever." That moment taught me that memory is not about repetition. Memory is about emotional activation at the right time, in the right environment, with the right question. Decades later, when I studied at Teachers College at Columbia University, I discovered that modern psychology had finally caught up to what my grandfather already knew. Researchers like Robert Bjork at UCLA have documented what they call desirable difficulties. The idea that memory is strongest not when learning is easy, but when retrieval requires effort in a supported environment. My grandfather created that environment every Friday night for 47 years. I want you to write one word in the comments right now. Write the word remember. Just that one word, because what I am about to teach you will change how your child processes everything they learn during the week. Here is the pain I see in almost every family that comes to me for guidance. Parents are exhausted. They spend their weeks driving children to school, to tutoring, to activities, to enrichment programs. They check homework. They sign permission slips. They sit through parent-teacher conferences. And by Friday evening, they are so drained that the idea of doing one more educational activity with their child feels impossible. So Friday night becomes nothing. It becomes the night the family collapses. And I understand that exhaustion completely because I have lived it myself with my own children. But here is what the modern educational system never tells you. Everything your child learned during the week, every math concept, every vocabulary word, every historical fact, every social interaction, all of it is sitting in their short-term memory on Friday evening, like papers scattered on a desk. And if nothing happens to organize those papers before the weekend begins, most of them will fall to the floor and disappear. Research published in the journal Psychological Science has repeatedly confirmed that memory consolidation depends heavily on what happens in the hours after learning, particularly during periods of reduced cognitive load. The weekend should be the most powerful memory tool your child has. Instead, for most families, it is a 48-hour memory eraser. The conventional approaches do not work, and I will tell you why. First, parents try weekend homework sessions. They sit the child down on Saturday or Sunday and force them to review the week. But by then, the consolidation window has already closed. The effort produces frustration, not retention. Second, parents rely on repetition. They make the child read the same material again and again. But the Talmud, in Tractate Eruvin 54b, already warned against this. The passage describes how Rabbi Preda had a student who needed to hear each lesson 400 times. But the Talmud does not celebrate the repetition. It celebrates Rabbi Preda's patience and his understanding that the student needed a different method of encoding, not more volume of the same method. Third, parents simply trust the school. They assume that if the teacher taught it, the child learned it. But there is a devastating gap between exposure and acquisition, and the gap widens every single weekend that passes without a consolidation practice. What I learned through decades of working with families and studying both the Talmud and modern cognitive science is that this is not a matter of doing more. It is a matter of doing one specific thing at one specific time, and that time is Friday night. This is not an isolated tip. This is part of a system of 7 interconnected laws that I have spent my entire career organizing. What I am teaching you today becomes 10 times more powerful when combined with the other 6. But even on its own, applied with consistency and love, this practice can visibly transform your child's memory and emotional connection to learning within 3 weeks. The source of what I am about to teach you is not a psychology textbook. It is the Shabbat itself. In the Torah, in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, we read that on the 7th day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested. The Hebrew word used is vaishbat, which does not simply mean to stop working. It means to cease in order to reflect, to elevate what was created during the 6 days into something whole and complete. For over 3,000 years, Jewish families have understood that Shabbat is not merely a day of rest. It is a day of cognitive and spiritual integration. The Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat 119a, teaches that every person is given an additional soul on Shabbat, a neshama yetera. Whether you understand this literally or metaphorically, the teaching points to a profound truth. On Friday evening, when the pressures of the week fall away, the mind opens, the heart softens. The child becomes available to a kind of learning that is impossible during the noise of the regular week. This is what makes this ritual different from anything you have tried before. You are not adding another task to your child's week. You are entering a space that already exists, a natural window of openness that occurs every Friday evening, and you are placing one sacred practice inside it. Today, I am sharing law number 4 of the 7 Torah laws of the genius child. I call it the law of the seventh day review, and it is the bridge between what your child learns and what your child keeps forever. Here is exactly how to perform this ritual. I'm going to give you the preparation, the elements, the steps, what to expect, and the conditions that must be met for it to work. Do not skip any part of this. Preparation. This practice takes place on Friday evening after dinner, in a space that is calm and uncluttered. The television must be off. All phones must be put away, yours included. The lighting should be soft. If you are comfortable lighting candles, do so. The tradition of lighting Shabbat candles is not decoration. The Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat 25b, connects the Shabbat lights to Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. The candles signal to the child's nervous system that the space has shifted, that the week is over, that something different is happening now. You do not need to be Jewish to light candles on a Friday night. You need to be intentional. The mental state you need is one of genuine curiosity. You are not conducting a quiz. You are not checking whether your child paid attention in school. You are entering a conversation about the inner life of your child's mind. If you carry stress or judgment into this space, the ritual will not work. The elements you will need are these. First, 2 candles. Their significance is dual, representing both the commandment to remember Shabbat and to observe it, Zachor and Shamor, memory and practice, the 2 pillars of all lasting learning. Second, a piece of bread, or challah if you have it. You will share it with your child at the beginning. Breaking bread together is one of the oldest human bonding rituals, and it activates what psychologists call affiliative neurocircuitry. The child's brain shifts from performance mode to connection mode. Third, a small notebook designated only for this practice. This is the child's book of remembering. Nothing else is written in it. Fourth, a pen or pencil that the child enjoys using. This may seem trivial, but it is not. Maimonides, in his Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Talmud Torah, chapter 3, emphasizes that the environment of learning must be pleasant for the student. A pen the child likes is part of the environment. Fifth, your full and undivided presence. This is the most important element and the one most parents fail to provide. The procedure has 6 steps. Step 1, sit together with your child. Share the bread. If you wish, say a simple bracha, a blessing. You can say, we're grateful for this food, for this moment, and for the chance to remember what this week has given us. The blessing is not about religion. It is about marking the transition from the ordinary to the sacred. Step 2, ask your child this question, and do not change the wording. What is one thing you learned this week that surprised you? Not what did you learn? Not what was your favorite subject? What surprised you? Surprise is the emotional marker of genuine learning. If something surprised your child, it means their brain encountered information that contradicted or expanded an existing mental model. That is where real memory lives. Step 3, listen without interrupting. Do not correct, do not expand, do not teach. Listen. Let the child speak for as long as they need. If they struggle to find something, sit in silence with them. The silence is not failure. The silence is the retrieval process working. Step 4. When the child has finished speaking, ask one follow-up question. Only one. Say, Why do you think that surprised you? This question activates metacognition, the awareness of one's own thought processes. Research by John Flavel at Stanford established that metacognitive ability is one of the strongest predictors of academic achievement, more powerful than IQ. You are training your child in metacognition every Friday night with a single question. Step 5. Ask the child to write what they shared in their book of remembering. Just 2 or 3 sentences, not a summary of the school week. Just the one thing that surprised them and why. The act of writing by hand activates motor encoding pathways that typing does not. Step 6. Close the notebook together. Place your hand on it and say, "This belongs to you now. No tests, no teacher, no grade can take this from you. This is yours." That final sentence is the seal. It tells the child's subconscious mind that this knowledge is safe, that it is not going to be taken away or evaluated. It transforms the memory from something fragile and school-dependent into something owned and permanent. Here is what to expect. Within the first 24 hours, you may notice your child spontaneously mentioning the thing they wrote down. This is the brain rehearsing the memory in a low-pressure environment. By 7 days, if you have performed the ritual on the second Friday night, your child will begin anticipating the question during the week. They will start noticing what surprises them because they know they will be asked. This is the most powerful shift. You are training your child to become a conscious learner, not a passive receiver of information. By 21 days, 3 Friday nights, you will see a change in how your child talks about school. The language will shift from, "I had to learn," to, "I noticed something." From, "They taught us to," "I discovered." That shift in language reflects a shift in cognitive identity. Your child is moving from student to scholar, from passenger to navigator. There are 3 conditions that must be met for this to work. First, you must never skip a Friday. Consistency is the vessel that holds the ritual. If you skip 1 week, you do not lose the ritual. But if you skip 2 in a row, the child's brain stops anticipating, and you must rebuild from the beginning. Second, you must never use the book of remembering as evidence against the child. Never say, "But you wrote last week that you loved science. Why are you not studying?" The moment the book becomes a tool of accountability rather than a tool of ownership, the ritual dies. Third, you must do your own remembering alongside the child. After they share, you share one thing from your own week that surprised you. The Talmud, in Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, Mishnah 1, asks, "Who is wise?" and answers, "The one who learns from every person." When you learn alongside your child, you are not performing authority. You are modeling wisdom. There was a period about 15 years ago when I stopped doing this with my own family. My consulting work had expanded across 4 states. I was traveling every week. Friday nights became inconsistent. Sometimes I was in a hotel room. Sometimes I arrived home so late that my children were already asleep. Within 2 months, I noticed something in my youngest son. He had stopped telling me about school entirely. Not because he was angry, because the container for those conversations had disappeared. There was no sacred space holding the question, so the question stopped existing. It took me almost a full year of consistent Friday nights to rebuild what I had broken in 2 months of neglect. I share this not to frighten you, but to tell you the truth. These practices are not optional additions to parenting. They are the architecture. When the architecture crumbles, everything inside it shifts. I read recently that the average American family spends less than 37 minutes per week in meaningful conversation with their children. I do not cite that number to shame anyone. I cite it because this ritual takes 15 minutes. 15 minutes on a Friday night. And in those 15 minutes, you accomplish more than most families accomplish in a month of forced homework sessions. I have spent 4 decades organizing the 7 laws into a complete system. My grandfather taught them to me one at a time, scattered across years of Friday nights and long walks through Brooklyn. It took me decades to understand how they connect. This law of the seventh day review is the fourth of the 7, and it works beautifully on its own. But when it is combined with the others, particularly with the law that governs how a child's questions should be received, the results multiply in ways I still find astonishing after all these years. Let me leave you with what matters most from today. First, your child's memory is not fixed. It is shaped by environment, timing, and emotional safety, and you control all 3 of those on a Friday night. Second, the question is everything. What surprised you this week is not a casual question. It is a precision tool designed to activate the exact neural pathways where lasting memory is formed. Third, the Book of Remembering is not a journal. It is an artifact of identity. Over months and years, your child will hold in their hands physical proof that they are a person who notices, reflects, and owns what they learn. That identity will carry them further than any grade or test score ever could. The knowledge you have received today is already working inside you. You heard it. Something in you recognized it. That recognition is the beginning. But knowledge without action is like a candle without flame. Use this. Start this Friday, not next month, not when things calm down. This Friday night, light the candles, break the bread, ask the question, listen, and watch what happens in your home over the next 21 days. Use this knowledge with intention and with love. In my next teaching, I will reveal another of the 7 Torah laws of the genius child, one that directly shapes how your child receives correction and transforms failure into fuel. It connects to what you learned today in a way that will become immediately clear when you hear it. If this teaching spoke to something inside you, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. Leave a comment below and tell me the age of your child and whether you are going to try this Friday night ritual this week. Share this video with one parent who you know is searching for something deeper than what the school system offers. And if you found value here, take a moment to press the like button. It helps other families find these teachings. Raise them with wisdom. Shalom.